Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of In Case You Missed It. This will be a recap for February 11th. Now, I'm sorry this is coming a couple of days late. Doing my best to put these recap videos up on the same day as the lesson. So let's scroll down here to February 11th. And in class, we reviewed some of the exercises. So to do that, well, we did some review of the concepts we covered. Then today we'll talk about variables and looping, and then we'll go over the next exercise. So let's go look at the exercise instructions to see just a quick review of what we've done so far. So in exercise 1, the idea was to write the code to display a shape followed by a second shape. And we first asked you to do a triangle, and the second shape could be anything. So that was fairly straightforward, and it's just meant to give you some practice displaying data on the screen. Now note it says printf. We're not printing to a printer. We're displaying onto the screen. Now, we also talked about these escape sequence characters. So this is a tab. Here's a double tab. You can see the effect over here. Here it's just simply printing the characters. Here, the tab itself is a character, and it is here. It's just not visible. So it's an invisible character. Here there are two characters. The effect is the indentation. You just can't see the characters. Over here we have the new line character, and we use that to improve the look of this. So if we put a new line character after the first hello world, then we get them to line up. And so that's fairly straightforward. Now, all these exercises build on each other. So now the next exercise was, okay, we want to display these shapes multiple times. And we did this the brute force way. We took our triangle display code and we just copy pasted once, twice, three, a total of four. We copied it 4 times, so we want to display the triangle 5 times. And again, this is fairly straightforward, but it's meant, the idea here is to give you a taste of what can go wrong, or why is using duplicate code problematic and to be avoided. If you find yourself, if you see you're using lots of duplicate code in your program, it's time to rethink the design. Now, as we talked about in class, what can go wrong with this approach? Well, think about what would happen if the requirement was to display the triangle 200 times, or 2,000 times, or 2 million times. This approach quickly breaks down. It does not scale. It can be done, but it would hurt, and your program would be enormous. So we don't want to do that. And we say, how does the approach break down as the number of shapes to be displayed increases? Well, the size of the code explodes. So how can we improve on that? Well, we introduce functions. Now, a function is just a block of code. Every function has a name. A function must be called. If you don't call the function, then the code in the function will not run. Now, those of you that had JRU last year, you did this. The syntax was slightly different, but the semantics is the same. So here we have a main method. Now, remember, JRU is Java, not C, so we don't call them functions, we call them methods. So here's main, and it's calling this other method called real maze, which is down here. I'll just zoom in. You can see I have another method here. You can ignore the code. So this code will only be executed if some other method explicitly calls it. If no one invokes this method, this code will not be run. Now, why is this a better approach? Well, you only have to create the shape display code one time. Now, if you want to display the shape more than once, then you call the function more than once. And down here you can see the beginning. Here's some simple pseudocode to do that. So we have, here's our display function, here's another display function, here's main. So we want to display the triangle and the square, so we call those two methods from here. So this is a big improvement. If I want to display the triangle 5 times, I just call the function 5 times. I don't have to repeat this display code. Now again, this approach is better than exercise 2, but it also breaks down. If I want to display those shapes 200 times, I have to invoke the method 200 times. Now, just a quick review of functions. Every function has a return type. You can see that here. So main returns an integer to whoever called main. That would be the operating system. These two functions return nothing. And void means nothing. Doesn't mean 0, it means nothing. Every function has a name. So main, display square, display triangle. Those are the names of our functions. Every function has an argument list, and you can see it represented by these parentheses. Now at the moment, these functions each of them has an empty parameter list. You can pass arguments to a function. For example, suppose I wanted to display the square 10 times. Well, when I call the function, I could pass the value 10 to the function. And then the function would use that 10 to display the code 10 times. And we haven't talked about how you would do that, but you can do that by passing arguments to the function. And every function has a body. The body is defined by these curly braces. So line 13 is open curly brace, line 15 is a closed curly brace. This defines the function block. Display square block. This is the display triangle block, and this is the main block. These blocks can be nested. In this case, they're only one level deep. So if we scroll down here, here's a very simple example of the main function calling the hello world function. It's defined over here. Everything inside the block is executed, and then control passes back to the line after the function call, line 10. At this point, the program ends. So using functions is a step toward minimizing duplicate code, but it doesn't get you all the way there. The next improvement is using a while loop. So here we have another exercise where you're going to display the triangle some number of times, and you're going to count the triangles as you go. So how would you do that? Well, these are some things you'll need in your program to do that. Here is the basic shape or framework for a function, for a while loop. So you have some condition that will be tested. And as long as this condition results in true, then the loop will be executed. So first time through, if this is true, it executes this code. And it comes back and makes the test again. Is it true? Yes. Do it again. And so on. And keep doing that until this condition becomes false. At which point, the body of the while loop is not executed and you drop down to just below the while block. Now, in this case, we're going to, let's see, how are we going to display this? You'll improve exercise 3 by adding variables and using a while loop and display the triangle n times. So here we're using variables, and I think the use of variables is defined in the videos. Now it says here use 3. You could probably get away with just using 2 variables for this. One of the variables is going to be used to display this number as you display the triangles. And that number can also control the number of times, or is a counter for going through the loop. So you specify how many times you want to loop, and then inside the loop, you have to be counting. So for example, while the number of triangles is less than the total to be printed, keep displaying triangles. If I reach the, let's say I want to display 500 triangles, I have a counter in here and it increases by 1 every time I go through the loop. When that counter is equal to the number of triangles to be displayed, then I'm done. Now let's see. Now that the while loop was explained in the videos, and you should refer to that for more assistance. Now this is what you should do. Let's see. As far as things you'll need, so you'll need some two variables. It says 3, 2 is enough. But you're going to need the printf, and you're going to include the %d format specifier. And here's an example of how it's used. So I have an integer called age, and its value is 14, and I want to say you are 14 years old. But so let's suppose I don't know the age. The age has been defined or been initialized somewhere else. I can just grab the age variable and insert it or embed it into this string. Now the %d is a placeholder, and it's expecting to be replaced by some whole number. That whole number exists inside this variable. In this case, that whole number is a 14. So when you execute this code, it displays I am 14 years old. Not I am age years old, but I am 14. So you use this concept to display something like that. All right, let's keep going. What you should do, so you create your project, give it that name. Your empty project should look like this. Remember to include these comments at the front. Remove the default comment, which is created when you start a new project. You can create the pseudocode using comments in your source code. Look in the appendix for an example, and then just fill in the code. So you're going to define some variables, two variables in here, and then you have a while loop, and you can use your display code from exercise 3. Don't write it over again. Just go back to exercise 3, get the code, get the function that displays your triangle, and paste it in somewhere in here. And then call that function some number of times. Refer to the videos if you need help putting the while loop together. And that's it. Now, let's see, for today, we're talking about, so we're talking about exercise 4 today. So I'm making this screencast a little late, so it's also got exercise 5. We'll talk about that. We talk about this in the February 13 lesson. So that's a quick recap of the things we covered in class. Watch the videos if you're having trouble. They're not very long, but they're very concise, and I think he explains this stuff very clearly. Okay, that's it, guys. See you next time.